Rachel, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm so well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You were just saying that you've just come back from a retreat and you're about to host a retreat and you've got some travel coming up to America as well. Like what's tell me more.
Yeah, I just had this. I mean, I've always loved traveling and being on the move, but I think for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll go into, the last probably year has really given me an opportunity to reevaluate what really matters to me. And part of that is my purpose and my path and what this world and what life, not to get too deep too quickly, but what we're here for and what it's all about. And I just had this urge to move and to be in different places and to explore different places and explore myself in different places. So it's this kind of exploration of within me and outside of me all at the same time. And, go to be it the ocean in one place and the mountains in another place. And yeah, just wanted to kind of get really up close and personal with life and with the world and explore it in different ways. So yeah, I've been away last week. I was in Crete, I was in Greece, and then I've got a few other things coming up. And people often are like, well, why, or what's going to happen, or why there? And I'm like, I don't know, I just have this inclination within me, like, you have to go there, and then I'll just book a flight. And that is literally the way it is at the moment. So it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Sounds it. Sounds like you're leading with intuition and at the same time like leaning into like that, like you said, that inner and external exploration, which is what an exciting place to be.
It truly is, and it doesn't always make sense to me. So when people ask why, I'm like, well, I don't even know. All we have is, and I think this is a really nice time for me to get to know um myself in this way of living, because this way of living feels really good to me. And it's like a playground, if you like, for other areas of my life, where I believe, and the way that I choose to run my life and my body and my business is through this sense of where am I being called, or what am I being called to do. In fact, just as I walked this morning, as I do most days, but I just had this kind of message come through, which was just to ask, like, how can I be of service today? Like, what will you have me do? And I'm asking this higher power, whatever you want to call that. Some people will call that God or source or spirit or the universe. It doesn't really matter. But I think for me, that's how it is at the moment. It's every single day, just taking time to stop and to slow down, to be still, to be quiet. And then just to say, where do I go? What do I do? What do I say? In order to be of most service to myself, and in being of most service to myself, also being of service to the world.
Yeah, I love that. That's so deep and so on point, and I love it. It's great. It's like what I was hearing there is that idea that in order to live our fullest life, we have to leave space for invitation. Inviting in like what we are being asked to do. I think in my experience, like so many people and myself for large parts of my life, we kind of like develop this plan of where we want to go, what we want to do. And it really sort of creates that, in my experience, that creates a space for a shattering when things don't go to plan. And I think there's certainly elements of both are necessary, but creating some space, and that sometimes like you are like really leaning into that like invitation, like what am I being called to do, what am I being asked to do, it can often be where like the real magic in life lies, in my experience. What about you?
I mean, absolutely. I think it's not always easy, because for me, and this is not the way I've always been, I used to be like trying to control everything, wanting to know all of the answers, wanting to know when, wanting to know how. And of course, I still have moments and days where I have that. But I think what has happened through the work that I do, through the kind of like exploration of my own self that I've been on, and part of that has been traveling, and not always traveling. Like I've obviously with COVID had a long period of time in stillness as well. and not moving and not even going much further than the kind of my local area, which also has so many lessons as well, by the way. But I think it's this kind of moment to realize, like, we're never going to have any of the answers. And so when you come to that realization, it's so freeing. Some people might think that that's going to be inhibiting, but when you come to this point of surrender, of I'm not in control of anything really and truly, there is absolutely no plan here. Although we can make a plan, we have to also give that up to something bigger than us. I always say, like, not my will, but thy will. And that comes from a pack of cards. And I pull that card all of the time because I'm like, I want it to work like this. And then there's some other route that I'm taken on. And so through that, like, experience that's happened many times, now I'm in this place where it's like, okay, that's like the rough place that I want to get to. And these are the rough goals that I want to achieve, or the rough things that I wish to manifest and my desires. And they kind of feel like boxes in the distance to me. But rather than fixate onto those things, how can I just allow myself to be gently guided, almost like a river finding its way to the ocean? You know, the river doesn't follow the straightest path down the mountain. It has weaves, and then bits join and bits leave, and it goes off into a lake, and then it, you know, and then it eventually finds its way. And that's a huge part of why I travel and why I explore different places, because the world outside of us, nature especially, has so many lessons. Like, we are nature, we are part of nature, but for so many reasons, we've separated ourselves from this world outside. And it's like, if we can just switch off the mind, drop down into the body, come to be part of the world outside, that hopefully the natural world outside, all of the answers are there. The answers aren't where we try and find them, which is like our own head, our own mind, our own puzzling. The answers are there, but they're often in the place where we're not expecting to find them. And they're in the quietness, like we said, in the stillness and the gentle curiosity of okay, like, let me do this in a different way now. And what I always say is, for something to change, something has to change. And so if I go back in my life to where I was, what I was doing, most especially how I was feeling, I wasn't feeling in the way that I wanted to, and I wasn't feeling in the way that I knew I could feel. And I saw other people feeling and looking amazing, and it was like there was a disconnect. And so I guess what it's been is this slow and steady kind of unraveling, unlocking, and then up leveling gently to where I am. And that didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So much to unpack there. And one of the questions I have just on that is, you just talking about literally going with the flow, like the flow of the river to the ocean, to the connected ocean. When you engage in life in that way, how does that impact your experience of the journey there?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example this morning. So I was walking and I left my phone in the car, and I walked somewhere where I know. So I kind of knew roughly how long I would be and that sort of thing. So I had this kind of contained space where I felt pretty safe within it, in terms of, you know, being here with you. Obviously, like, when you don't have your phone, you don't have the time. So I'm just walking, and rather than having like a dictated path for my walk, I go into the park. I live just by this huge big park, and I just go in, and rather than taking the route that I always take, and there is a route that I will often take, this morning I went in and I was like, which way shall I go? And it's like, just go that way. So I walk that way, and it's like, not like, well, then how long is that walk going to be? Or, well, where's that going to take me? Or, well, how do I, but then what, you know, like how the mind goes, like, but, you know, all of the questions that come up. It's like, okay, let's see what happens. So I take that route, take that path, did that the whole way. And then I ended up to this like quite big pond. And there's this duck sitting in the very center of the pond, literally the very center, so still, but obviously there's still some movement, that these kind of like rings of like gentle vibration from that duck are like coming out, perfect circular rings coming out from this duck. And so I'm looking at the duck and I'm like, wow, like that is literally, you know, for me, I speak about the kind of quantum world that we live in, how everything is energy, how everything is connected, how we have this power just even in this moment, even though I can't in this moment see the people who might listen, or I don't know who they are, I know that in every single moment of our day, we're kind of having that vibration, this energetic vibration that we're giving out. And it is literally for me like the picture of this duck in the pond with these vibrating circular rings coming out. And that's kind of how I see every single human, in the sense of we have this resonance, we have this frequency, we have a vibration. And that for me was the visual image of what that is, that wherever we are in the world, we're kind of giving out this gentle, like almost like sonar pulse, you know, almost like what you might see on some sort of, I don't know, like mechanical, you know, like some sort of radar thing or whatever. I don't know what it's called. And so that's for me what happens. So there's like two parts there, which is one, let me just use this next 2 hours to surrender to a journey where I don't know where it's going to be. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know what I will see, but it was beautiful and glorious. And I ended up in routes and places that I wouldn't usually go. And also I'm open and able to witness nature showing me a lesson that I needed to learn or remember or be reminded of in that moment. And then it takes me then to my other parts of my life, maybe where I find that less easy. Other parts where I want to control it. Say, for instance, now I come and I'm like, well, I have these 10 things that I need to do in my day for my business, let me just say. But I have this reminder this morning of like, when you just surrender and say, okay, what next? Okay, where next? Okay, what should I do now? And not should I do in terms of like the societal impression of what should I do, but I'm asking like the universe, like, what should I do now? And I just get this nudge, like either to send an email or to put a post up, or it might be something completely counterintuitive, like taking a rest, taking a break, going, sometimes I have it like go and sit in this random cafe, not even that close, and work from there today. And it will be there that I see something that inspires something else. And so it's like following breadcrumbs, not knowing where it's going to end up, but knowing that where you will end up will be exactly where you're supposed to be, and probably even better a destination than what you could have imagined.
Yeah, totally. I did a post recently and I said your purpose will give you will leave you breadcrumbs, not Google Map instructions. You know,
Yeah.
so like following those breadcrumbs. And I know I intuitively understand what you're speaking about, and I have experience of that as well. And I think, I don't know about you, but I noticed myself ignoring that voice a lot of the time. And I think that once you've practiced following that voice a little bit, that internal guidance, another way of putting it, it's and it leads to something special, something magical, which it often does. Then there's always this stage of like it coming up and you've been like, oh no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do this instead, I'm going to do this. So like and we will get to talking about your work in a minute. I'm really interested to get to that, but I really want to stick with this. Do you have those experiences still of that voice sort of nudging you, that internal guidance guiding you, and you being like, no, like I really need to send this email now, like this is important and I'm going to do this?
I think yes. I mean, I know yes, because I'm in it, but I think it's never going to go away either, because we're not living in a bubble. We're not living in like a vortex, that we're always in interaction with. And I'm a deep empath. I'm extremely sensitive to other people's energies and the world around me as well. So for me, I feel I will always have, and I think everybody will always have, you know, the ego sounds in the mind, the what should I do, the conditioned route, the pattern. And whilst that does change, absolutely it changes, the voice changes, the urgency of the voice changes, I think, because what happens is we get to know another voice, which is a calmer, softer, more nurturing voice, which for me is the voice of like my soul or spirit talking to me. And I think absolutely sometimes like source, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it, says do this, and I'm like, oh, like I want to do that today, or I want to do this today. Or like sometimes it happens when I'm like, again, let me just talk about walking, because that's often where I like, for me, physical movement, I bring it in a lot. And I'll be like ready to go home now. I'm like, I'm tired. I've done my time. And then it's like, no, take this route over here. And I'm like, it's the opposite direction. And so you do always have a choice, right? You always have a choice. But I think what changes is it comes down to a decision. Like, how do you want to live? What's your commitment in this life? How do you want to feel in your day? And I know that this like infinite spirit is more wise than me. And I know there's a bigger plan for my life. And I think what I have got to the stage of is now I have committed to that unraveling so resolutely, that I can stand there for a minute and I can hear the voice like go that way, and I can hear the voice like go that way. And I know that I have a choice, and I ultimately know whichever route I take is going to be perfection, because that is the route that will lead to that path unraveling in front of me. So in that sense, there's not a right or wrong. But I think for me in this moment, what's coming up is like, we have a choice to take radical responsibility of ourselves, to lead ourselves. So I think what I want to make clear is there's not a right or a wrong which path that you take. And yet, if you've made a commitment to something bigger, or to feeling the best you can feel, or to letting as many people in the world hear your purpose, or whatever it might be. And I think for me, that commitment for me is to live the fullest life possible, and to take whatever step in the most radical, responsible way, leading myself to become in every single moment the best version of me, the fullest version of me, the wholest version of me, so that I can then be the best coach that I can be in my world, the best daughter I can be for my mother, the best sister I can be for my siblings, the best friend that I can be, the best partner I can be, all of these things. But that starts with me. And so when I hear that voice, like, go that way, I would say 99% of the time I go that way. And of course I don't always. And the other part, maybe the 1%, is the part where I just don't listen. I don't have the space to hear because I'm busy, or because I'm distracted, or because I'm being human in that moment. So yeah, we don't have to do anything. But I think if there's a commitment for what you want in your life, and how big and how extraordinary and how spectacular you want your life to be, which I truly believe it can be for everybody, then that's the point where it's like, I really don't want to go that way, but I'm going to go that way because I'm being called there, and just trusting that it will take you to where you're next meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that evokes in me is, because I work with a lot of clients around like purpose as well. And you'll know as a coach that, once people like tap into or agree with themselves that they want to live a more fulfilled life, or get clear on their purpose, that and what it evokes in me is that idea that like living your purpose and living your life where you're your best version of yourself, for yourself and for others.
Yeah.
It's that it is work. It is constant work. I think that sometimes there's this perception that like living your purpose, as it were, and I would say that I'm much further down the line of living my purpose now as a coach than I have been at most periods in my life. There is this misapprehension that it's easy. It's going to be like chill and flow, and like Zen is the word that comes up a lot. But it's not. Like, it's hard. Like, it requires work. Like this, you're talking about surrender was the word that was coming up for me. But I think it becomes much easier to do that work when we are aligned with purpose, and we like have a wider vision. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it does mean that we are able to go beyond our perceived limitations if we tap into that energy of purpose, and in some cases surrender and connectedness.
I think in some ways it's harder because you're not doing the thing or for me, I felt that there's times when I'm doing such a different thing from so many people around me. And obviously that changes the more you then start to meet people who are doing similar things. And I think that's a really important part of the journey, especially at the beginning, when I started to have more friends who were in a similar world or thought the same thing. It became easier, I think. But we're doing things, or at least for me, the way that I make decisions from this place that just doesn't make sense, that people are like, well, why? Or how did you come to that decision? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, it just was this thing that in my head, and I've just booked a flight, and they're like, okay, so what are you going to do there? And I'm like, I don't really know, but I know that, and I believe that different parts of the world have these like activation lines, you know, like my soul like needs to return to certain places. I mean, that's going super existential, so maybe again we'll just like take it down a notch for now, but I truly believe when it's like, go to this place, whether it's around the corner from here or whether it's on the other side of the world, that there is some purpose that I don't know, and I maybe will never know even when I'm there, but something will activate and unlock within me. You know, swimming in a certain ocean holds a certain energy, different parts of the world, places, everything holds energy, but there's something in me that needs to connect with that energy. So I think in that sense, for me, it's harder because so many people don't understand the way that I'm doing things, and that can sometimes feel like that side of things can feel hard for me. But I think it's a shift, and when there's a shift, then there's a commitment to a shift of perspective, of paradigm, of thought process, of the way you're living. Again, when you're in the middle of that like recalibration period, I think also that can be quite hard for the human, for our emotional space. But I'm in this place right now where I feel everything that I do, I get to decide the energy that I put into it. And actually, in that sense, nothing really feels hard for me. Not because it doesn't take focus and it doesn't take commitment, and I spend many hours planning, and I work with different team members and things like that. And sometimes like the radical responsibility can be hard, but we also then get to decide on the other side of that radical responsibility, like, okay, I have this day in front of me. I have like this session with you, and then I've got a couple of coaching sessions later. I've got a group session. How do I go into those sessions? Do I go into it like, oh, this is so hard and I've got so many things to do? Or do I go into it knowing that I've moved my body this morning, knowing that I've connected with myself this morning, knowing that I've eaten nourishing food, that I've had a really good sleep? And actually, for me, it just feels like a complete joy to be here. It doesn't feel hard. And that's not the case every single day. This is definitely today, you know, I have good energy in my body, but there's also, if things are feeling hard, and as someone out there is feeling like things are feeling hard, question why are they feeling hard? Because likely there's something that's out of alignment behind that step, right? So if I showed up to you today to record this podcast and it was feeling hard, well, have I, you know, shown up for myself before the moment that we started recording? Because the chances are, if it did feel hard, or if it didn't feel like I wanted to be here, well, why have I said yes? Why am I here? You know? But the truth is, I've got to this stage now where I know what my body needs most of the time. I have time to check in and ask it what it needs every day. And when I do that, and when I commit to that, when I commit to myself first and foremost and showing up as the fullest version of me, actually things don't feel hard, and I get to choose that they're not going to be hard.
Yeah, so that feeling of like, oh, this is hard all the time and I'm really being challenged, is like, that's a message from within, being like, you know, what are you doing that you think that you should not be doing? What are you not doing that you should be doing? You know, like ask those sorts of questions of oneself, right? Yeah,
we get to go into something and struggle with it. Like, for instance, if my soul said, do this, I could either just be like, oh, okay, I'm in. Or I could sit here for 3 hours and be like, but why? And again, this is a process. This is a journey. This is an evolution. It will probably not happen overnight, although it could. But it for me, like releasing struggle is a big part of, I think, my soul's journey that I'm learning in this life, just to release struggle. You know, I had to pay some parking tickets this morning and it's been a saga. And I've just got to this point where I was like, this is taking up more energy trying to get to the bottom of it. Just pay. It's £500 of parking tickets, right? So either I could stay in this struggle with the situation, or I just said to the guy, just give me the number. I'm going to pay it right now. Because, you know, although that's like, okay, it's a lot of money, it's parking tickets, the things I could do with £500 in this moment, I would love to be able to put that to something else. But I just thought, that's every single moment we have this choice. Do we just say, I'm just going to surrender, I'm going to release this, I'm going to release me, I'm going to take off these, you know, this harness that I'm putting myself in? Or I could have stayed in the conversation with this man probably for more months. You know, I could have stayed in the back and forth, but I don't want to. I want that space. I want that time for something else. So I'm going to release the struggle. I'm going to let it be easy. And I'm just going to, you know, pay the money.
Let it go. You know, I'm no longer going to savor this pity like a fine wine. I'm going to just sling it out. Love it. And for the record, I do not want to dial this down. We should dial the extent.
I'm ready.
Keep it going. I will, because you know, I would love to talk a little bit about your work as well.
Yes.
And because, you know, I've followed you on Instagram for a little while. Your content's awesome. It's really absorbing, and there's just so much depth to it. And in terms of your work, you know, which I think is fantastic. There's no putting you in a box, which I think is great, because a box will eventually at some point limit us. But from my observations, you work, I saw on your website, I think you work with women to be the boldest, bravest, brightest versions of themselves. And you work with many disciplines like health, wellness, nutrition. You offer coaching, retreats, and you talk about astrology and spiritual growth and manifestation as well. So there's just so much depth. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you work with clients?
Yeah, it is difficult because I there is so many different modalities there, and like you say, you can't put me in a box. But what is interesting is I often try and put myself in a box. I often feel those voices of like, well, what is it, and what do I do, and how do I say it, and how do I package it? And I'm definitely at the point now where I'm like, there is no box. Like we're all the way out of the box. But it is also, I think, an interesting reflection, maybe for people listening to this, that yeah, there's been moments where you hear put yourself in a niche and things like that, which I don't agree with. So my work started originally with nutrition and with movement, with yoga, through my own experience of my body and life and how I was feeling. And it really started with a personal exploration, which showed me that healing is so possible on so many different levels. And that I think and what it started with me for was literally healing. Like I wanted to feel well in my physical body, in my emotional body. And when I started my journey, I wasn't feeling well, and I wasn't well, to be honest, in my body at all. And so it started with this exploration of like, okay, well, how can I use herbal medicine? How can I use nutrition as medicine? How can I use movement as medicine? And it started off with healing, with this kind of, but that was like the foundation level for me. That was like step one. And then when I got to that stage, then I was like, oh, okay, like I'm feeling pretty good. And what I realized was I can feel good eating. Food is medicine, absolutely. And food helps us feel well. But there is more to it than that. In that, it's all about, it's like an accumulation of emotional and energetic as well. So I started off very much physical, talking to clients about their bodies, talking to clients about nutrition, talking about the physiological things. And then we'd get somewhere, but then I would find myself saying, but like, tell me about your relationships, and tell me about your stress levels, and tell me about how your sleep is. And what I realized is that then these more emotional spaces and how we were feeling, how we perceived the world, how we perceived ourselves, how our emotional frequency was was such also a huge defining factor around, at the time I was doing a lot of gut health and a lot of hormonal health with women, which I still include. So I was like, okay, so the food is good, but we also need to look at the emotions. And then for me, the third level was then really tapping into energy. And that's where the more astrological side of things come, because depending on what's happening with the planets, what's with the moon, with the sun, cosmically, I really truly feel that there is an impact on our energy. And also within the energy, there's like our thoughts, our belief systems, how we perceive the world, but on an energetic level. And so for me now, very simply, my work is, and I believe my purpose is here to unlock a woman's sacred gifts. And in order to do that, we use the physical body, we use the emotional body, we use the energetic body. And it's kind of like pulling those three modalities together, within which there is so many like micro modalities, let's just say, and other techniques and methods that I use. But it's ultimately pulling together kind of like the three bodies into one and raising the overall frequency or vibration to ultimately just feel the best that we can feel. Because, and this is where the evolution of my work has happened, the way I see and the way I experience the world is that when I am in the best place possible, whatever that means for me, and it's going to mean something different for you than it means for me, and it's going to mean something different for every single person in the world. But when I am ultimately, let's just say, the best version of me that I can be, then what I attract in is the best version of everything else in the world. I have deeper, more loving conversations with friends. I have more fun. I can show up more fully for my clients. Their transformation journey is even more powerful than it ever used to be, in a like micro amount of time than what we used to spend. And so then to tap more into the energy, I see that every person is the beginning and end of their own world, and that everything that exists in my world is an extension of me. So the length of my arm will dictate what I can reach. And ultimately then it's like almost just lengthening my arm, lengthening my arm, lengthening my arm, so I can reach more, so I can feel more, so I can experience more, so I can welcome more sensation into my body, welcome more joy into my body. And that is what I do with clients. It's just taking them to the best place that they can be, so that they can create whatever it is that they want in their life. For a lot of them, it's business. They have similar kind of businesses to me, or they're just starting a business journey. I think that's mostly where my clients are now. It used to be a lot of like more in the physical, trying to get pregnant and things like this. But yeah, now it's like this. It's almost like I've just swept up all of the work that I've been doing, and it's all included. But it's so powerful, I think, now, because I think having that understanding that I now have of the body and the world and us as a being, an energetic being, has been completely game changing for me.
Yeah, and it feels like that, just looking at everything you're putting out there, it feels like a life's work. It feels like a holistic approach, and it resonates with me deeply. I originally trained to become a coach to like enhance my corporate job, and I trained as a life coach. And it's actually throughout the coach training process that I realized that in order to heal myself and be the best version of myself, in order that I can help clients heal and grow, that we have to have everything on the table. We have to in my work, there's 6 energy centers. It's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental. So it's like a framework, but it's we can't just look at a few of these centers. We also can't just look at work. We can't just look at, okay, well, how can you improve your practice? How can you get to the next level at work? It needs to be a holistic approach. And that was the one thing that I was okay, if you really, and that was, the universe speaking to me, saying if you really want this, you've got to let all of this go and go all in on it, because that was what was coming up for me. And so, yeah, it really resonates that we have to have everything on the table like that if we are to grow.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started the nutrition, so I'm a qualified nutritionist in naturopathic nutrition, and the kind of one of the main principles of naturopathic nutrition is everything in the body is connected. But then it's like, so for me, my body and my life is, like I said, like the playground now for the world. For me, it's like every single body is this condensed experience of the whole entire cosmos. You know, we are, I believe, the expression of divine consciousness within every single cell of our body, just as the sun is an expression of the divine consciousness in the trees. So the way that I now see the body is that everything is connected, just as I did before, but more than that, everything in the world is connected, which is going back to that analogy of the duck and the little like rings coming out of the duck. Everything in the world is connected, and everything in the world is responding to us and me, my frequency, my vibration, my like energy sequence that I give out, which we can't see, but we feel, and we communicate with on a feeling subtle level, which is, again, for a lot of people, they're like, but where's the evidence? And I can't see it and I can't hear it, but we can, and we feel it, you know, we get that sense of people. Why do we, you know, instinctively go and look at that person or speak to that person at a party and not that person? You know, it's because we're attracted on some magnetic, energetic level. So if everything is responding to me, then all I need to do is every single day, in every single choice, say, what will raise my vibration, and let me choose that. You know, when I'm eating my breakfast in the morning, it's like, what can I, you know, include here so that I can feel the best? And obviously I know about nutrition, so I think about fiber and fruit and vegetables and not too much sugar and all these sorts of things. So I feel like all of the things that I've learned have provided this education and information, which has been very important to now feed into this bigger picture of, well, everything's energy, everything is a vibration. And my only job, I believe, is to listen and be quiet and follow source, but within that also choose the option that will serve my highest good. And in serving my highest good, I will serve the world from that place. And I think that's a huge paradigm shift, because the way that we've seen it before is, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? If there's an output, then I will have achieved something. If there's a quantifiable thing, then I'll have achieved something. If I've made this much money, then I'll have achieved something. And actually, it's like, I can just sit here and maybe not even say anything for an hour, be on the podcast in silence, and trust that the energetic frequency that we've exchanged will have impacted somebody, maybe even more profoundly than my words.
It's like leaning into that, what is unknown. You know, there's so much that is unknown. We only have a very, very limited amount of set of instruments with which to engage with the world. Even our mind has limitations placed upon it in terms of what we can understand. We know there are things that exist, scientific forces at play, that our mind can't hold. You know, like in quantum physics, for example, any qualified quantum physicist would say, if someone tells you they understand quantum physics, they definitely don't. Like, no one does. It's like, we accept like dark matter and all of these things, and you know, these are scientific demonstrable realities that we can't hold. Our mind can't hold them. So like, why on earth would it be like relevant to say, well, I don't know, there's not much evidence of this and I don't know about that? It's about leaning into the fact that there are things that we don't know, and ultimately we will never know them unless we kind of lean into them and give them a chance and like see what can come from them if we start to be guided by, you know, just other parts of ourselves, sometimes to start with, just very subtly, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's finding the evidence ourselves. You know, the evidence doesn't necessarily exist in the way that other people want to see it, or the other people might say, well, that's good enough to go in, I don't know, like a scientific journal. But when I start to, again, just the walk this morning, I just start to surrender to something bigger than me. I follow a path, I follow a path, I follow a path. I have the most beautiful walk. I have the most fantastic ideas while I'm walking. You know, some dots have been joined together for me, and some moves that I'm going to be making in my business and in my life. And so I'm like, well, there's the evidence.
There's
you
the
know,
evidence.
and the
Yeah.
evidence doesn't need to be something physical, but
Mm.
I choose that that's going to be my evidence today, that I am now living in alignment. I choose that the way I feel in my body right now, which is like, I don't know if in this moment I could feel any better, I choose that that's going to be the evidence that I'm doing things right. If I was sitting here with a headache or feeling really pissed off or feeling really frustrated, that would be evidence that something's out of alignment, and then I just need to look at that and get curious about that and create change, I don't know, in my day or in my morning tomorrow, for instance. You know, if I've had 3 coffees this morning and I'm feeling a little bit twitchy, that's the case, something's out of alignment there. So it's literally just, and if someone's listening and they want to start tapping into this, just put your hands on your heart right now and ask your body how it's feeling. Feel how it's feeling. If I'm like twitchy or can't focus, or I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done now, I want to go. These are all little moments of evidence for me of how I'm feeling, which maybe is good and maybe is not good at its very simplistic level. And then within that, there's an opportunity to just slowly, like we hear the term in this world a lot, like nudge the needle, move the needle. And that's all we have to do, is just these small, subtle, like I see us as like creators with a ball of clay in front of us. And every single day we just mold that ball of clay in a slightly different direction until we're like, yes, that's exactly how I wanted it to look. But that ball of clay is our entire life. So all we have to do is each day just slowly mold this ball slightly differently. You know, just take a little edge off there, or just add a little bit on here, or just, you know, hug it in a little bit there. That's all I do in my life. But when I feel good, then I'm like, okay, I'm doing that's, then I'm in alignment. You know, it's really, and I choose that to be my evidence to go back to that point. You know, that's where I take my evidence from. And of course, then from that place, the more metric quantifiable evidence will come as well, in terms of the clients I'm bringing in. But also for me, it doesn't matter so much about, of course, the quantifiable thing matters, the number of people, of course, that matters to an extent, but it matters more that I'm working with the right sort of person, the person that feels aligned for me, because that also has a huge impact on my energy, my mood, my emotions, my everything. So it's all energy. It's all energy.
Energy, yeah. And so what I'm hearing you there is like, say there is like just becoming more of you, like tapping into more of you.
Yeah.
You know, allows you to attract in just the right amount of people. You know, I say one of the foundation principles in the framework that I work with is energy attracts like energy. And, you know, if you like allow yourself to express yourself as authentically as possible, which is like similar to what you were saying in terms of like looking deeply within and allowing to the surface whatever is coming up,
yeah,
then you will attract those people that are on the same frequency as you, that are into the same things as you, and ultimately are, you know, like looking for what you have to offer, and you are offering something that only you can offer because of the way you are offering it.
Yeah, 100%. It makes sense. I think the place where it gets interesting is when we start to tap into the unconscious frequencies, because we have what we know in this moment, you know, and I know what I know in this moment, but there's lots that I don't know, you know, the unconscious mind, the less obvious, the even more subtler parts of my body. And the easiest way to work out what those are is saying, what is present in my life right now? That is something that I've attracted. But if it's not what you want, or if it's not happening in the way that you think you want it, then it's possibly starting to think about also what's happening in the unconscious or the less conscious spaces, which is again where I kind of work with astrology. I work with visualization. I work with like psychic mentors and things like that, because for me that allows me to explore also the subtler or less conscious parts of my body, which I think is possibly even more important, because it's like it's something that's, it's like having an invisible driver in the driver's seat and you don't know where you're going. It's like like you said, like the sat nav is there and you're being taken to a destination, but you don't know who's the driver. And that's like the unconscious mind. It's someone is driving us, something is driving us, but the unconscious is there and we can't see it and we don't know what it is. So also starting to get to know that. So I think if someone out there is like, yeah, but why is this happening and why is this happening? Well, it's an uncomfortable truth maybe, but it could be something within the unconscious mind or the unconscious space that could be looked at. You know, we are the makers, the creators of our destiny.
Yeah.
And when it's not going in the way we want, it can be frustrating and be annoying. But for me, that is an opportunity just to, like, you know, put our hand back in the bucket and see what we come up with, see what's in there.
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you said there about that very straightforward practice of just like putting your hand on your heart, just closing down your eyes and just feeling into like what's going on in there. Very like simple, very straightforward, very profound practice. Can you share any other like tools that either you use or you share with clients to kind of like help them to, you know, feel better, practice regularly to kind of like elevate their energy levels, or anything really that, you know, helps people day to day?
Yeah, so I think it starts with observation, awareness, a gentle curiosity into your own body. So you know, sit and think about your being, think about your body, think about you know, for women, how is their menstrual cycle? It's very important guide, I find, to tell me, because it's constantly happening, not just when we're bleeding or not just when we're ovulating, this constant sort of cycle and season that we can tap into. You can also think about the wider context of your life, your relationships, your home, your work, and things like that. So you can almost start with like the hands-on heart audit for your whole entire life. And for some people, it might feel good to literally go through every part of their life and I'd not rate it, but you could put a score against it. You know, 10 is how I want it to be. And that would be like, you know, that would feel joyful and that would feel easy and that would feel connected, or however else it is that you want to feel. And then look at all the areas of your life and say, does it feel like that? Does it feel easy? Does it feel connected? Does it feel joyful? Does it feel abundant? And look at all of the areas of your life. And if there's a part where it's like, well, I want to feel joyful and right now I feel sad. Okay, well, let's look at that part. What can we do to change that? So if that's, you know, or let's just take the body and say that there's not very much energy in the body. Okay, well, what can you do to raise your energy? And for me, then I would be looking to give advice nutritionally and supplementally, looking at herbal medicine, but also looking at like our structures and our routines, looking at our sleep, of course, looking at our waking up, like our cycles, our routines in the morning and the evening. But I would be also saying, well, where is the specific parts that don't feel good? And maybe that's a specific part of the body. Maybe that's a specific part of your world. It's like, I feel exhausted when I see this person. Okay, well, let's look at that. So everything is just this, like, the way I often describe it and the way I see it is right now in your life. And if you're listening and you want to like close your eyes and see this tapestry in front of you, and the tapestry is this like woven thread of what your life looks like. It's like the snapshot image of your life in this moment. You've got you there in work, you've got you there in home, you've got you there in your relationships, you've got you there with yourself, in your body, in your being. And each like representation is an image of how it is. And if any part of that tapestry of your life is not looking how you want it to, then it's literally like, okay, we zoom into that part and we just gently like pull the threads and say like, okay, well, what's happening there? Okay, what's happening there? And we just gently unthread it. And my work is this, like I said, like an unraveling and unthreading of the parts that don't feel so good and rethreading it back together with new information, new knowledge, new wisdom. And part of that might be new routines or new patterns or new belief systems or new programs. But what you'll find is that the thread of that will also be connected to the thread of everything else of that tapestry. So I think for someone who just wants to feel better, start to think about very simply the parts that don't feel good right now and get very honest with yourself about why they don't feel good. And there may be uncomfortable truths there, you know, friends who we've been friends with for 30 years, but we're going in this direction and they feel in that direction. So, you know, we have sometimes to make uncomfortable choices around decisions. And this is where deep stories and emotions can come up around guilt, around shame, around fear, embarrassment, resentment, all of these things, you know, well, who am I to tell that friend of 30 years that I no longer want to see them, you know, or if I do this, or if I take that step in my business, I will be rejected by my family because they won't understand. So that's where I feel working with a coach is the game changer, because we can often see, we know what doesn't feel good in our life. Every single person knows what doesn't feel good in their life, but it is and sometimes we can also know how, but it's like having the reflection of someone else, or someone else who's been through those motions. That's all really a coach is, I feel, is someone who has been through the motions that you want to take, and they get to guide you in that space, and help you unravel that thread and reweave it just a little bit quicker. You know, I work with a coach, and I said to her the other day, I could have got to where I am by myself, but it probably would have taken me 30 years rather than 6 months, you know. So yeah, I hope that answers the question, but I think it's ultimately a gentle curiosity, a radical honesty, and then a leading oneself, with or without a coach. But it's definitely easier to do it with a coach.
It definitely is. And you know, like me and you are both coaches, so we would say that, but you know, I don't know anyone that's worked with a coach and been like, oh, that was a bad idea, I really didn't go in the direction that I wanted to go. And then, you know, you really do get laser focused, providing you pick the right coach. And that's what
100%. And you'll know, like, the feeling will be in your body, like, yeah, this is the right person. Same with same with any practitioner that you work with, therapist, yoga teacher, you know, Reiki healer. It doesn't matter what the person is. And it's exactly the same with our friends, right? There's lots of people in the world. I don't want to be friends with all of them. I don't want to hang out with all of them, because you know, some of them are my people and some of them aren't, and that's okay.
And that's what I think is so funny, like just circling it back to like internal guidance, is like that is that internal guidance. And there are some places where people access it so easily, you know, like it's almost a societal saying, like, oh, like when you're buying a new home, like it's so important buying a new, or like buying a new home, renting a new home, whatever, just moving. And you're like, oh, you'll know when it's the right place. And you do, like everyone knows that, everyone's had that advice, everyone's felt it, everyone's like moved into the wrong place and been like, oh yeah, you know, it's just like wasn't the right place, I knew it when I moved in. It's like, yeah, that's what internal guidance is. Just what you need to dial into, that's what you need to dial up. And same with like friendships and everything else.
But I think in that example, sometimes it's either like, well, it's this or it's this. And I actually had a conversation with a friend just yesterday, and I said, you know, there's not just two options here. There's an infinite number of options, which is sometimes like annoying, because it's like, well, I don't know what all the options are, but I think there's also that, you know, so if someone is listening and they've tried to find a house and they've never found a house that feels good, well, maybe they're just not meant to move into the house right now. Maybe it's, you know, to be somewhere completely different. So also, you know, to remember that it's not just A and B. And I have some friends who have a lot of air in their charts, and I'm always fascinated by how many options they can give to a situation, because I have a fire and it can be very focused. I'm an Aries, and so sometimes I'm like, well, it's this or it's this, so which one is it? One has to be right and one has to be wrong. But actually, not that either of them need to be right or wrong, but it could just be that there's a completely other different option as well. So in that sense, it's again taking ourselves out of the box and unfixating from the end destination, and maybe getting clear on, for me, I always think about the energy that I want to feel. And if the word energy, for some people, they don't like it, how do you want to feel? Like, what do you want to feel in your day? Get clear on that, and then change anything that does not feel that way. If you want to feel joy every single day of your life, look at your life right now and say, what doesn't feel joyful? And it's like, well, my job doesn't feel joyful, but it's a job, and we'll change that belief system. And then you just go through that sequence of events one by one or many by many. And that's as simple as it is. What do I want to feel? What does not feel that right now? Well, there's a misalignment. Okay, so what can I do to make change so that there's now a realignment? And that's what we do every single day.
Great summing up. I love it. And tell us about all the different ways in which people can work from you, just as we're sort of getting to the end of this wonderful chat.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's lots of different ways. Obviously, I have one-to-one and I have group spaces. But for me at the moment, a space of mine that feels really powerful is my membership portal, which is called the Activation Portal. It's a monthly rolling membership. So especially if people are maybe new to my space, you can join whenever you want. You can stay for as long as you want, as long as you need, as long as feels right. And it feels really powerful because there's so much in the portal already. And kind of the way that I describe it is it's like finding you, the true you, but then like turning you all the way on, like switching on all of the light switches within you, hence the word activation. But also within that, I have live masterclasses, master series that I host within that space as well. And yeah, it's so powerful. Even just literally just before I joined you today, I just got a message in the WhatsApp group from someone who'd said, you know, they've just finished one of the series and how, you know, incredible it had been for them, and that they were ready to watch it all away again. And I think that's something really important to remember as well, because we so often read a book or you know, watch a masterclass or take a workshop or something like that. But for me, having it within that space where it could be rewatched whenever is so powerful, because you take on something different each time. You're a different person each time that you watch it. In my yoga practice and when I'm teaching, I often say, like, the first thing I'll say is like, who are we today? Get to know this body, get to know this heart, because we're something different every single morning. So I think if people are just new to my world, maybe check out the activation portal, that membership space. There's so much within their meditations, series, standalone sessions, and it's kind of looking at the 360 approach. So there's nutritional things on there, there's hormonal things on there, but there's things about emotional release, energy shifting, energy clearing, mindset things to up level and things like that as well. So yeah, we've got all of the different levels. It's very fun. Yeah.
And where can people find you on social media? Do you have a newsletter? How about people that are just curious and wanna just follow you from that space?
Yeah, I love to connect with people. So please, like, send me a message, DM me, voice note me. I love to hear from people about where you're at and what you're doing. So Instagram is the best place, at Rachel Cruickshank with an underscore at the end. My website is www.rachelcruickshank.com. And I also have my own podcast, which is called Human Being to Whole Being, where I kind of speak to lots of different guest experts. And this series that I've just started is all about opening up a conversation about like taboo topics. I don't really like the word taboo, but topics that we find generally to be quite uncomfortable as a society, and topics that have induced feelings or emotions of shame, of guilt, of fear, of embarrassment, and actually having this conversation, because we're all experiencing all of these things all of the time, and it's when we hold on to the emotion that we make it mean something about us and our world. So yeah, inviting the expression and release of these things through conversation. So yeah, you'll find it all on my Instagram.
Great. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your time. I feel energized. I feel illuminated. And yeah, this has been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Let's do this again sometime. Come on the show, or maybe we'll do an IG live and talk some more about shame and grief and all of these other things. Let's keep the conversation going.
Makes me think of Game of Thrones, the shame bell. But yes, we'll release it. We'll release it all.
Right. Well, see you again soon.
Thank you so much.